Hello and welcome to lesson 29 of the Learning Guitar Studios. In this particular lesson we're going to discuss the shape of E7. So we are starting with the dominant 7 chords and scales and arpeggios obviously. In particular we're looking at the so-called, from a scalic point of view, the Mixolydian mode. When I say shape of E7, of course we are starting from a E major type of open chord. We're applying the dominant 7 and so far very easy. Obviously because we're talking in terms of shape and the guitar is a transposing instrument, this is E7, but I can take this entire shape as it is and transpose it, and now I have F7, F sharp 7, G7, and so forth and so on. Our root note is on the first string, so that gives us a good reference of, from a visual point of view. So say C7 would be up here. E7, 12th fret, A7. The shape is still the same, we're just transposing it. In the context of this lesson, for the first time, compared to the previous lessons, we're going to look at it scales, arpeggios, and chords. So, as I explained since lesson 1, I guess, these are 3 sides of the same coin, okay? If a coin had 3 sides, obviously. So the moment we think, say, A7 as a chord, automatically I can think of A7 as a scale, and I can think of A7 as an arpeggio. Of course, more likely, surely, if you're comping for somebody else, more likely you'll play the chord, and when you're soloing, you probably will be using both the arpeggio and the scale. Before we move on with all the PDFs associated with this lesson, let me, explain quickly what I mean by Mixolydian. By the way, the charts that I'm going to show you in a second, they are taken from lesson 16 in harmony and theory. So you might refer to that lesson if you need to. So if you look at this, we're looking at chord number 5, okay? And what that means is our relative Ionian, say if I'm playing A7 like I was before, I'm actually playing the Ionian, okay? And even when we discussed Dorian, we discussed this. In other words, so the scale that I just played is the same scale that I would play if it was D major, D Ionian. Which, is a very comfortable thing, because in a way, whatever we studied when we did Ionian, in this case, this is a shape of A, which means you're looking at lesson 10 when it comes to exercises, scalic exercises. So you might want to refer to that. In this case, so basically it means that we're not adding extra practice that we have to do. All the exercises that we did in lesson 10 for intervals, triads, extended triads, group of 3, group of 4, they still apply here. It's pretty much the same. And as I said before, somebody might wonder, okay, what's the point then of thinking in terms of Mixolydian as opposed to Ionian? So let's say I have a G7 on a chart. Why would I bother thinking G Mixolydian as a scale as opposed to just D Ionian? It's the same note after all. Well, as I mentioned before, for me, from the way I like to play, if I see a G7 on a chart, I like to think the chords that I can associate with it, and we're going to look at them in a second, all the arpeggios that I can associate with it, and the scale that I can associate with it. And I think in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 8. Ionian is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So say in A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's a major, okay? But if I think it Mixolydian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 8. And now I'm thinking A7. So in other words, if this is the chord, I like to see it as a dominant chord. I don't like to see G7 and then think D. Sorry for the long explanation of this. Now, let's go back to another chart that explains us the extensions that we have. So when we harmonize the Ionian scale. And again, if you don't know much about this, please refer to lesson 16 where I explained it. And by the way, I spotted a couple of mistakes. This should read G, and this should read, this should read D, and this should read D7. It's just a spelling mistake. Probably by the time you see this, I will have corrected on the PDF that I uploaded. This is correct, by the way. So when we look at the arpeggio, and we will do it in a second, we're looking at 135, obviously, flat 7, because this is a dominant 7 chord, and the extension we get is 9, 11, and 13, which is important when we study the arpeggios, obviously, because this is, the triad plus the flat 7, which gives us the dominant 7 chord and the upper stretcher. So when we think in terms of scale, so we're looking at a scale which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and I'll show you to you in a second on the PDF. This is in the key of A, obviously. And we can do all the exercises that we studied when we did the shape of A major, basically, okay? Group of 3, triads, group of 4, and as I said, this is great because, we don't have to, the number of exercises we're doing is not actually increasing. If you look at the PDF, which is associated with this lesson, so here, first of all, you find the Mixolydian scale. In this case, I did it, as usual, I wrote it in the key of G, and the relative Ionian scale, as you can see, is the same notes. When it comes to the arpeggios, obviously, like I just showed you, we have the triad, dominant 7, 6, added 9, 9, 11, and 13, because we know these are the embellishment that I can add. And of course, I have the full modal arpeggio, and I'll show it to you in a second. We have 2 octaves in this particular shape that we can use. This is the second octave. Then we have the full dominant 7, the caged version of the arpeggios, and then dominant 7 and dominant 9, 2 octaves arpeggios. So let's first of all look into that. So let's do it in the key of G. This would be my triad, arpeggio wise, second octave. 4 notes, so dominant 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, and I can have 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9. And if I combine them, I get with this. Or 2 octaves of dominant 7. The full extension would be 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 11, 13, 1. And we have the so-called modal arpeggio. This note contains basically all the notes of Mixolydian as an arpeggio. When it comes to the scale, again, in order for you to improve your visualization, obviously you want to practice this chromatically up and down the neck, telling yourself what you're playing. In other words, this is G Mixolydian, A flat Mixolydian. You can use as a reference your bass notes, actually, because in this case the scale starts from the root note, so this is A Mixolydian. And as a scale, it goes with the dominant 7 chord. So A7, A Mixolydian. C7, C Mixolydian. Or the arpeggios. That's like a dominant 7 arpeggio with a 9. The full modal arpeggio. And in terms of exercises, as usual, you might want to take each individual arpeggios and move it up and down chromatically on the guitar, say like dominant 7. A flat, A, B flat, B, and then eventually play the reversed, so starting from the last note, in this case starting from the flat 7, A flat, A, B flat, B, C, and then alternating them, so ascending, descending, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G. So you might want to start from G and up in G. Same thing, say, if you were doing the 9th arpeggio. So this is 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, alternated manner. Okay? 6, I mean, every single arpeggio that you find, you can basically practice it this way. And the same thing goes for the 2 octaves. So this is G7, A flat, A, B flat, B, C sharp, D, E flat, E. As I said, like in terms of extensions, so why the 9th, 11, and 13, and no, say, flat 13, okay? Is explained by that chart I showed you before, and how we got there is explained in lesson 16. If you cannot be bothered to look at those, take it a bit like a dogma. The extensions are 9, 11, and 13. Something else you might want to look into at this stage, so as I move forward in this PDF, these are exercises I just showed you. As usual, is the group of 3, group of 4. I'll show them to you in a second. And from scale to arpeggio. So what you're looking at, group of 3, take any arpeggio you want. In this case, I'm going to take 2 octaves of dominant 7. So this is the full arpeggio. In this case, I'm going to play just the first 3 notes, then the following 3 notes, then the following 3 notes, and so forth and so on. This is basically a way of breaking down the arpeggio in smaller chunks, okay? Instead of being played this way, it's just... Same thing, group of 4, so instead of playing 3 notes at a time, we're playing 4 notes at a time. Again, if you cannot really follow from the video, don't worry, everything is dubbed into the PDF. From scale to arpeggio means trying to alternate, say, for example, ascending with the scale, descending with the arpeggio. So, ascending with the scale, and descending with the arpeggio. So this is in A, B flat, B. This is a very good exercise for your right hand because you're moving from an horizontal stretch or a scale to a vertical stretch or an arpeggio. Another thing we can do is exactly the opposite. So maybe ascend with the arpeggio and descending with the scale. This is B flat, B. I'm going to add the extra notes. C, A. Sorry for that. C sharp, D, and so forth and so on. The last part of the PDF, when it comes to exercises you can do with the scale and the arpeggios, we're looking at arpeggio-wise, moving from chord number 1, so C major in this case, because we're working with G7, and of course, as I said, if G is 7, 1 is C. If we wanted to do this, say, like using A flat 7 instead, the chord number 1 would be D flat. So from G7, we're going to C. And we're just practicing the 2 arpeggios back and forth. Again, do it slowly to a metronome, but what you're looking at is, say, for example, C major. G7. C major. G7. As you can see, as you can hear, the arpeggios really highlight the chord, because it's basically the chord spelled one note at a time. And, you know, and of course you could do this in group of 3 if you wanted to. Let's see. G. You can always try and design, you know, your own exercises if you want. You know. Last part of the PDF deals with kind of recapping what we've done so far in terms of arpeggios and scales. So moving from Ionian, so in this case G Ionian, to G Dorian, to G Mixolydian with the arpeggios. Here is like major 7, minor 7, dominant 7. Same thing with the modal arpeggio. So with all the extensions. We know that the extension for major is the major 7, 9, 11, and 13. For Dorian, we know is, you know, Dorian is minor, and then the extensions are flat 7, 9, 11, and 13. And for Mixolydian, as we have discovered today, is 9, 11, and 13, and a flat 7. Same thing here, and it's happening in terms of scale. Why do you want to do that? Do these kind of exercises? Well, this is going to help you train your ears in hearing the differences in between Ionian, which is a major scale and goes with major chords, Dorian, which is a minor scale and it goes with minor chords, and the Mixolydian, which is a dominant 7 scales and it goes with dominant 7 chords. And the moment I play it in the same key, so in this case we're going to use G, like I did in the PDF, you're really going to hear the differences. Let's check it out. So this is, I'm going to play it in sequence. G Ionian, G Dorian, G Mixolydian, Ionian. Dorian. And you can hear it's minor, right? Mixolydian. Back to Ionian. So in a way, if I was playing these as chords, I'm playing G major, G Ionian, G minor, G Dorian, G7, G Mixolydian. And the same can be done with the arpeggios. So like this would be G major 7. So we're looking at Ionian. G minor 7. So I'm looking at Dorian. G7 and I'm looking at Mixolydian. And play it as a sequence. And you can move it, of course, you should move it chromatically, so like, you know, in every key, so like C major 7, C minor 7, C7 as a scale, C minor, C Dorian, C Mixolydian, so C7. Now let's look at the last of the PDFs, which deals with chords. So we looked at the scale, we looked at the arpeggios, now let's look at the chords. And as usual, there's a couple of pages here of chords associated to this particular shape. So we're looking at E7, I'm going to show you tune the guitar in a second, but, you know, as you can see, I managed to put together quite a few chords. All you have to remember when you look at this, you know, of course, this means like it's a barré. When I put just a white dot, it means that this is the chords you're going to play. This is just for a visual reference. You don't need to play this. And of course, as you can see, the chords contains basically just 1, 3, 5, sometimes 1, 3, flat 7, so a basic dominant 7 chords, and sometimes it contains the extensions. In this case, there is a third, let's see, 13 and 9 as an extension. You will find at times you will find the 11, like here, So, you know, some chords are more straightforward, some chords are more colored. Let's start from the basic shape. So we said we have E7. There is a dominant 7 right here, just basically a D note. And I can double it up this way. So this is E7. And I'm playing all the strings, okay? And of course, as I said, we can take this particular shape and transpose it, okay? In this case, for the sake of exercise, I'll transpose it in A. The PDF is written in no particular key. Whatever you place the 1 in the chord, that's going to be the key you're in. So this is a basic A7. And I broke it down to, say, maybe sometimes just for note. 1, flat 7, 3, 5, and that's enough for me to establish like a dominant 7. So you might have with a 6, with a double flat 7, with a 9 here. You can break it down even like, say, with the 11. There are several, say for example, this one is flat 7, 3, 5, and the root note is on the E string. These are all A chords. I'm actually going to use an A in the bass so you can hear. This is also, that's with an A. With a 13 and a 9. If I want to make it smaller, obviously this is 1, 3, flat 7. So these 3 notes is already a dominant 7 chord. I can add the 9. As I said, you have like a couple of pages you can play with. Of course, you can also have like not necessarily the root in the bass. You can have the 3rd in the bass. This is also like an A7. This is 3, flat 7, another 3, and a 13, a 6. This is all with a 3rd in the bass. 3, flat 7, 9, and 5. 3, flat 7, 9, and 6. I said there is many shapes you can find in the PDFs, which I'm uploading with the lesson. Of course, like all this stuff, I uploaded to, as you know, to Patron. Subscribe. I mean, it's only $3 a month, but you know, for just to access basically the PDFs. All the previous lessons until the last 2 are free, even the access to the PDFs. So, like all the Ionian and Dorian ones, most of the Dorian ones. And your support obviously is very much appreciated because you know it helps me in doing this. Obviously. For the advanced Patron, I'm also uploading a backing track. It's a static chord. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show to you the way it works at the end of this lesson. But basically, it's basically a static chord. So say G7 as a backing track, so you can practice arpeggios and scales on top of it. And of course, like it's basically 12 backing tracks. So it's G7, 1 per each key, G7, A flat 7, B7. So it should really help you with your practice. Just, you know, in getting around the sound of the arpeggio and the scale, as, you know, and the way the backing tracks are done, you can definitely hear the chord, but I play them as pads, which means that you can use the backing track even to play chords and to play rhythm. As I said, I'm going to show it to you at the end of this. I think this should be enough for this particular lesson on Mixolydian. We are at lesson 29. We covered the Ionian, so we covered the major chords. We covered Dorian, so we covered some degree of minor chords. There is more when we do Aeolian and Phrygian. And now we're covering Mixolydian, so we're covering dominant 7 chord. As you can see at this stage, I'm starting to give you all 3 things at the same time, chords, arpeggios, and scales. Because if you followed my lessons from the very beginning, by now you know how to approach, how to practice these things, so it's not too overwhelming, okay? For those of you that are just starting now, seeing this for the first time, you might want to start from lesson 1, and lesson 1 is basically Ionian, just the scale, 1 particular shape. Lesson 2 is just the arpeggios, and lesson 3 is just the chords. In this case, is getting all together slammed into one lesson. Next lesson, obviously for doing shape of E, next lesson is going to be shape of D. So instead of looking at D major or D minor like we did by D major, D minor, don't forget I'm talking shapes. So for me, this is G major, this is G minor. We're going to look at G7 in the shape of D. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. More importantly, I hope you'll find it informative. Don't forget to download the PDFs. And stay tuned if you want to see the way I will practice the backing track. If you want to support what I'm doing, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even better, if you subscribe to the Patreon, would be great. And, or if you want to leave a donation. I'll leave all the details are going to be in the video description. I thank you very much for following up to now. This has been quite a long lesson. And if you have any question, leave it in the comment section and I'll be happy to reply. Thank you very much. Until next time, goodbye.